Los Angeles, 2010. A sprawling metropolis, shimmering under the California sun, a city of dreams and endless possibilities. But beneath the surface, a darkness festered, hidden in the alleys and shadowy corners. A sense of unease gripped the city as whispers of a long-dormant nightmare resurfaced, spreading like wildfire. In a forgotten corner of the city, authorities unearthed a gruesome discovery: human remains hidden away, silent witnesses to unspeakable acts of violence. The news sent shockwaves through the community, reopening old wounds and igniting a firestorm of fear and uncertainty. A killer had walked among them, preying on the vulnerable, leaving a trail of devastation in their wake, a ghost in the crowd. The hunt was on, a race against time to identify the victims and bring their tormentor to justice, before more lives were lost. The discovery of the remains was just the beginning, a grim puzzle that needed to be solved. A chilling realization dawned upon the investigators. They were dealing with not just a murderer, but a serial killer, a predator who had eluded capture for years. The city held its breath, haunted by the specter of a predator lurking in the shadows, a constant, unseen threat. Every passing day brought with it a fresh wave of anxiety, as residents grappled with the knowledge that a monster had walked among them, hidden in plain sight, blending into the fabric of the city. The pressure mounted on law enforcement to find the perpetrator before they could claim another victim, a race against an invisible enemy. The city watched, waited, and prayed for answers, hoping for a resolution to the nightmare that had gripped them. The investigation began in earnest, a painstaking process of piecing together the fragments of shattered lives, a mosaic of horror. Forensic experts meticulously examined the remains, searching for any clue that could lead them to the killer, every detail a potential breakthrough. Detectives fanned out across the city, interviewing potential witnesses, chasing down leads, and following every thread of evidence, no matter how small, in their quest for justice. The victims, they soon discovered, were not random targets, but part of a disturbing pattern. A pattern emerged, a horrifying tapestry woven from the lives of young black women, many of whom had been forgotten by society, lost to the streets or caught in the clutches of addiction, their stories overlooked. As investigators delved deeper into the case, they uncovered a sinister truth. The killings were not recent, but spanned a terrifying timeline. The remains pointed to a reign of terror that had spanned decades, a chilling reminder that evil could lurk beneath the surface for years, waiting for the opportune moment to strike, hidden in plain sight. The city was in shock, grappling with the magnitude of the horror that had been unearthed. How could such depravity have gone undetected for so long? The question echoed through the streets. The answer, they would soon discover, lay in the shadows, shrouded in a darkness that had protected the killer for far too long. A darkness that now had to be brought to light. The investigation led them to a name: Lonnie Franklin Jr. A seemingly ordinary man leading an unassuming life, a mechanic, a garbage collector, a neighbor. Yet behind this facade of normalcy hid a monster, a predator who had terrorized the city for years, earning himself a chilling moniker, the Grim Sleeper. The nickname itself sent shivers down the spines of Los Angeles residents, a chilling testament to the fear he instilled. Lonnie Franklin Jr. was an enigma. To those who knew him casually, he was quiet, almost invisible. He blended into the background, a ghost in his own life. But beneath the surface, a darkness simmered. A simmering rage, a twisted desire festered within him. He moved through the world unnoticed, his true nature concealed behind a mask of normalcy. The nickname Grim Sleeper was coined for the chilling 14-year gap between his confirmed murders, a period of eerie silence that had lulled the city into a false sense of security. It was as if he had vanished into thin air, only to re-emerge with a vengeance, his bloodlust reignited. This hiatus in his killing spree only deepened the mystery surrounding him. What had driven him to kill in the first place? And what had compelled him to stop, only to resume his reign of terror years later? The investigation into Lonnie Franklin Jr. was like peeling back the layers of a rotten onion. Each revelation was more horrifying than the last, each detail revealing a depravity that was difficult to comprehend. He had operated in plain sight, his crimes hidden in the shadows of a city grappling with its own demons. And as the full extent of his crimes came to light, the city of Los Angeles would be forced to confront the darkness that had festered within its midst for far too long. The story of Lonnie Franklin Jr. serves as a grim reminder of the monsters that can lurk behind the most ordinary of facades, and the chilling reality that evil can exist in the most unexpected places. The Grim Sleeper's reign of terror stretched back to the 1980s, a time when Los Angeles was already grappling with gang violence and the crack epidemic. The city was a powder keg of tension and fear, with communities torn apart by drugs and crime. He stalked the streets, his eyes searching for his next victim. The darkness of the night provided the perfect cover for his sinister activities. His hunting ground, the marginalized neighborhoods of South Los Angeles. These areas, often overlooked and underserved, became his playground. His prey, young black women, often involved in drugs or sex work, their lives already touched by hardship and despair. They were the invisible, the forgotten, making them easy targets for a predator like him. Lonnie Franklin Jr.'s crimes were as brutal as they were calculated. Each act of violence was a cold, deliberate move in his twisted game. He would lure his victims with promises of drugs or money, offering them a brief escape from their harsh realities. This false sense of security was his most powerful weapon. But this semblance of kindness was a cruel facade, a prelude to unimaginable horror. His victims never saw the true danger until it was too late. He would then overpower them, subjecting them to unimaginable violence before ultimately taking their lives. The brutality of his actions was beyond comprehension. He discarded their bodies like trash, dumping them in alleys, dumpsters, and vacant lots. Their deaths often written off as drug overdoses or misadventures in a dangerous world. The true horror of their fate remained hidden. For years, the murders went largely unnoticed, overshadowed by the rampant violence and social unrest that plagued the city. The chaos of the times provided the perfect smokescreen for his heinous acts. The victims, many of whom lived on the fringes of society, were often dismissed as casualties of circumstance, their disappearances barely registering as a blip on the radar of a city grappling with its own demons. Their stories were lost in the noise. Their families and loved ones, however, knew the truth. They felt the pain and the loss deeply, their lives forever changed. They felt the void left by their absence, their cries for justice drowned out by the cacophony of a city in turmoil. Yet they never gave up hope. But even in the face of such indifference, hope flickered. The determination of those left behind never wavered. Mothers refused to let the memory of their daughters fade. They became warriors for justice, their voices growing louder with each passing day. Friends clung to the belief that one day, their killer would be found, their bond strengthened by shared grief and a common goal. And slowly, painstakingly, investigators began to connect the dots, uncovering a pattern that pointed to a single perpetrator. The pieces of the puzzle started to fall into place. The Grim Sleeper, they called him, a chilling moniker that reflected the cold-blooded nature of his crimes and the terrifying reality that he had haunted the city for decades, his true identity, a mystery. The name itself sent shivers down the spine of anyone who heard it. The Grim Sleeper's reign of terror was punctuated by a chilling silence. From 1988 to 2002, the killings seemingly stopped. 14 years of eerie quiet. 14 years where the monster that haunted Los Angeles seemed to vanish into thin air. Had he found another outlet for his darkness? Had he moved on, only to return to his gruesome hobby when the urge struck him again? The questions lingered, casting a long shadow over the city. Theories abounded during this period of chilling quiet. Some speculated that the Grim Sleeper had been imprisoned for other crimes, his true nature masked by a system ill-equipped to connect the dots. Others whispered that he had fled the state, only to return when he felt the heat had died down. Each passing year without a trace only deepened the mystery, adding fuel to the fire of speculation and fear. This period of silence was perhaps even more unsettling than the active years of the grim sleeper's reign. It was a time of uneasy peace, a constant reminder that the monster was still out there, lurking somewhere in the shadows, biding his time. The families of the victims lived in a state of perpetual limbo, their grief compounded by the lack of closure, their hopes for justice fading with each passing year. Then, in 2002, the nightmare returned. The grim sleeper resurfaced, his bloodlust reignited. A young woman was found dead, her body discarded like so many before her. The modus operandi was the same, the signature of a killer who had honed his craft over decades. The city once again found itself in the grip of terror, the realization dawning that the monster they had hoped was gone had merely been dormant, waiting for the opportune moment to strike again.